You're listening to the Bulldog Hour, getting you inside the Wilson football program with weekly game previews, recaps, highlights, and interviews. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and Justin Raffauf.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Bulldog Hour. I am one of your hosts, Joe Mays, and sitting here with me, yes, for real this time, Justin is here as promised, but we're also not alone. It's not just Justin and I. It is also Paul Roberts from SB Sports and BurkeSportsReport.com. So, Justin, Paul, thanks for being here to talk Wilson football.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Thanks for the candy as well. Three Musketeers.
That's right.
Best
right.
candy on earth.
That's right. I had seen you catching some flack for that, and I'm like, hey, we do not discriminate based on candy choices.
We do not slander candy.
Here.
No,
at least on air.
So, Mr. Ross Tucker, if you're out there listening, I'm sure you are.
Yeah.
We love our Three Musketeers here. We want to make sure Paul had a few snack size to get him through this hour with Justin and I.
Right.
So. But no, we have a great show. It's actually our first live show in a while. I've done a bunch of recordings. Justin and I interviewed the senior players. I played that one. I interviewed Coach Doms. I interviewed a few more assistant coaches. I had 2 different assistant coaches interviews. That was great. It's been a lot of fun. But Justin and I haven't been together to do a live show in a while. And what better way to do it than 6 days before, not even 5 days before Wilson kicks off their 2023 regular season. And we look forward to talking about those 10 games here tonight, as well as the scrimmage, which Paul was at yesterday. He got to see the bulk of that action. It went reasonably well. I thought everything went pretty good all around, all things considered. And we will talk about that action as well. But before we do that, as usual, we want to thank the people who make this show possible. Our Season 9 sponsors, Mays Sandwich Shop and White Star Tours, as well as a few others who have been on board and got back on board in addition to Mays Sandwich Shop and White Star Tours. MikeDragosports.com, the Hop Family, and 5 anonymous donors. So we are right back where we were last year and appreciate everyone jumping on board and supporting us here at the show to make things possible. And there are many ways you can help us out here in addition to sponsorships, advertising, the in-kind donations, particular to visit BulldogHour.com. That's a great place to get information on Wilson football, past, present, and future. And then, Justin, I've covered it the last few times, so I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, like and share, especially this time of year when content's going to start flying out, especially through the weekends, starting with the game, the lead up to the games, and then through the games, and then again through our kind of recaps and things like that. Like and share, spread the word. We love kind of, when we're out and they're like, hey, aren't you good, the guys? Especially at the games. Yes, that's always fun. But yeah, like and share.
And we are on every social media platform out there. We're much more active on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. X. Facebook, X, and Instagram. But we're also on Twitch and YouTube. And YouTube, we definitely want to see you subscribe. So if you're watching right now on YouTube, hit that subscribe button so you get all of our content. You can even hit the notifications so you can be alerted when we go live. Speaking of our live shows, next week we will be a day earlier. Justin and I are going to broadcast Saturday evening, August 26th. We will recap the game against Roman Catholic, preview the game against Central Dauphin. Again, that'll be Saturday because on Sunday, Justin and I have a very important
trophy
meeting.
Presentation to attend.
Oh, that's right. I forgot you won.
Yeah, that's right.
We have our fantasy football draft Sunday night, and unfortunately, Justin is the champ for the 5th time in our 18 years. So Justin is definitely the king of that league, much to my dad's chagrin. He doesn't like Eagles fans winning, and he's surrounded by them. He does like to remind me that he and I have won the same number of times, though, but can't say that about you anymore. But yeah, so we'll have a live show next Saturday, August 26th. So I do have the 2023 schedule up there. I know a lot of people are asking about it. I made a graphic for it this past week, and we'll get to that shortly, but I do want to talk to Paul about the Wilson scrimmage yesterday off the bat, because it's the first live action we've got to see of the football team against people that are on your own team. I went up to practice. I didn't get there during heat acclimatization week, but I saw the beginning of 2-a-days or 3-a-days, whatever they're called anymore, just to see
all day.
Yeah, the all day practices,
yes.
just to see the pads on, the hitting, and people were really excited. The energy level was high. It was great to be there, take some photos of that event. But I always love that first scrimmage, although now the last few years it's the only scrimmage with the way the PIAA has switched things around. Had been against Parkland for decades, it felt like. And now we've settled in with Coatesville. And, obviously a big-time, big-school opponent, bringing a lot of talent with them. Wasn't sure what to expect, because I think Coatesville came in ranked from, I don't know if it was PA Football News or Penn Lives, but I believe right around 10 in the 6A rankings, preseason rankings. So, Paul, what were your takeaways from the scrimmage?
Yeah, defensively, Coatesville is supposed to be really, really good, and just physically, they pass the eye test when you look at their front four. But if I'm a Wilson fan, I'd be thrilled with what you saw there. The defense really dominated. And listen, I'm the first one to say it's a scrimmage, but keep in mind, this is really their first chance to hit somebody else. I thought the Wilson players were really fired up. I mean, they were ready to go. Guys like McMillan, Kurzwig. I mean, you saw a lot of energy. They were excited. And it started out with 10 plays in a row, then the other team gets the ball. And Coatesville really struggled to move the ball a little bit against Wilson's defense. I thought the D-line and the linebackers were outstanding. I mean, they really controlled things. You can't hit the quarterback, but there were situations where there would have been a couple sacks if the play had continued. There were a bunch of running plays that Coatesville ran that got snuffed out in the backfield that would have gone for losses. So, defensively, I don't know that you could have asked for much more from the first team group that Wilson put out there.
Yeah, I was also pleasantly surprised. That's why I was really happy to see your tweet saying essentially that in 280 characters or whatever about how people should be excited with the way the Wilson defense played in the scrimmage. And you put, scrimmage, we get it. Don't get way up high, but also don't ever get way down low, because it is just a scrimmage. But it makes you feel a little bit better when you see your team play well. And I know it doesn't mean everything, because I think actually probably exactly 10 years ago, the team went over to actually West Football Stadium because the high school was still under construction. Gursky was still under renovations. Parkland came over there, and I thought we looked really bad. And I was like, oh, man, this... And that was the season where everyone was saying Wilson was going to go 5-5, 6-4, because of that 2012 team was so strong and had so many two-year players. Almost all had graduated. Matt Timochenko was back as quarterback, who started at the end of 2012, but almost everyone else was new. This is the year that it ends for Wilson. And during that scrimmage, I was like, oh man, that looked a little rough, But you don't want to buy into the outside noise. And all they did was go 12-1, and were a Joey Julius field goal away from making the district championship game. So you can't always put full stock in the scrimmage. But like you, I was also very happy with the way things went, especially defensively, because that's the unit this year that is reloading. We've heard about the offense has 9 out of 11 guys back. They lost Brendan Hopp and Cam Jones, but everyone else is returning. And I had talked about the 7-on-7, which I believe you were at in June, right?
Yeah, that was a great event. I mean, there were a lot of North Penn came, Manheim Township was there, Steel High was there with the Irby brothers. I mean, that was really good competition. No hitting, of course,
right.
But as far as the teams that came to Wilson, that Central York was there. I mean, that was a good 7-on-7.
It was, and during that, I was really pleased with how the offense played.
Right,
I think things were clicking, and I know without pads, it's not real football, but you still want to see them be able to do it when there isn't pressure, when they can read everything. So at both times this offseason, when things have gone down against non-Wilson opponents, against other teams, I think both units looked really good. And seeing the defense, who only had, 2 or 3 guys back from last year perform the way they did and have other people say the same thing felt really good. So, and heard the coaches talk afterwards with the players. They were very pleased with everyone's effort. Didn't seem to be a lot of miscommunication or issues getting into positions. So it seems like the mental and physical game is right there. We know there's a daunting task lying ahead for the Bulldogs to kick off the season, and that is with Roman Catholic, which we're going to talk to about briefly. But any final thoughts on the scrimmage? I'm going to try to pull up your video here.
Oh, okay.
So let me see if I can find it, because one of the guys that really stood out and is someone who I think will garner recognition on the football field. We know from him from basketball, but now on the football field is Maddox Gruber, who did stuff in the scrimmage that was fantastic, both on offense and defense.
Yeah, and certainly if you're a Berks County Hoops fan, the name's familiar, especially in the northern part of the county. His dad, Jared, was a star up at Hamburg. In fact, one of the most memorable games I ever covered, not for Reading High fans, but was when Hamburg went down to the Geigel complex and absolutely blew out Reading. They won the game, I want to say, by 18 points. My buddy Kevin Driscoll was on that team. Nick Evangelista was on that team, who's still involved with Hamburg baseball. And Maddox's dad, Jared, was on that team too. They were really, really good. But Maddox is good at hoops. And in football, the 7-on-7, he also had a pick in the end zone when Steel High was trying to score. Yeah. And he had a great catch too. And I'm going to post a reel tomorrow, so people should look out for that, of some of the highlights from the Wilson and Coatesville scrimmage. So if you follow SV Sports on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, you'll be able to see more highlights. But I did get the pick six up there, which was a nice little tip drill. Just two final thoughts. First play of the game for Wilson offensively, Corell Akins had a really nice run.
Like 40 yards or something.
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, turned the corner off the right side. It was blocked up really well. And, everyone's kind of wondering, you lose 24 touchdowns from Cam Jones, who was also the best returner in the history of the school. Who's going to step in there? And Akins had a really nice run. And then also, Dendel and Matta and Case did not play in the scrimmage, and Wilson still looked good. So those are three key players that we're talking about there. Just a couple other final thoughts from the scrimmage.
Yeah, and expectations are that Jack Dendel will be available to play starting week 1 this Friday at Roman Catholic. More of a precaution to keep him out after his hand injury earlier this summer. Don't know much about the status of Case and Matta going forward, but I would expect to see Jack out there playing both ways in the trenches, which will be, you add that body and strength in there. Definitely someone who's a difference maker for the Bulldogs. That was one area actually that was singled out from talking to some people afterward, that they were really excited with the way the defensive line played, specifically the defensive tackles, Kurzwig and Reiniger, when they were in there. Their off-season work has really paid off, and it sounds like they are going to be the anchors of the defense to let the scheme work and do what it's supposed to do. You have a great linebacker group that we saw during the Coatesville scrimmage. It was mostly Valjukevich and Hunsaker worked outside. We also saw Brady Klein move around out there, and then inside McMillan, Fiorini, Klein also worked. So they have a nice group of 5 linebackers they can rotate in there, whether they're playing with 3 or 4 of them. A lot of depth. That was one thing that was talked about a lot this offseason, that there's depth at a lot of positions. But specifically Kurzwig, Reiniger, and a nice rotation at defensive tackle, their strength, they're hoping can be a tone setter this season. If you're good in the offensive defensive line, generally you have a good season. I believe it was Coach Wolver who said lineman-led teams generally have a really good year at Wilson. I'm not sure that's different anywhere else either. Generally, if you have the line, a lot of other pieces fall in place.
Yeah, and I think the offensive line, especially, if everybody comes back healthy at some point, can be really, really good. Akins will get time at running back. Fiorini will get time at running back. But those guys up front, and Kurzwig wrestles at 285. He's very good wrestler, very physical player, guy who goes to the whistle and occasionally slightly after the whistle, which he was reminded about again.
It's play through the whistle. Play through the whistle.
But he's about as physical as it gets out there. We talked about Dendel. McMillan is back, who's another wrestler, really strong kid. Reiniger, when I do a time to grind feature, usually every Tuesday for SV Sports, where the coaches kind of let me behind the scenes. So it's usually not on the field stuff. It's things people don't get to see in the weight room, conditioning, stuff like that. And the day I was there, he didn't have his shirt on for any of it. Now, if I looked like him, I probably would not wear a shirt as often either. But yeah, I mean, he looks in terrific shape. So the offensive line, I think, really is going to be the strong suit of this team.
Yeah, and
honestly, if we've kind of mentioned it, and it's going to come up. But when you're trying to replace the production that you lost on offense, it's crazy because you said they lost 2 guys on offense, but there was a lot of production.
Yeah.
When you look at like production by numbers, like percentage wise, they lost a huge percentage. However, what you need in that instance is you're going to need a bunch of guys to step up, and the best way to do that is to have your offensive line play well to allow those other guys to step up. Because look, there's some great athletes back there. There's not a Cam Jones back there, and that's not a knock on any of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, he's all-state Division I player,
right? But if the offensive line can play well, that's going to give the other really good guys a chance to contribute in their own ways, and it's going to take multiple guys contributing in their own ways. So, yeah.
And Akins is only a sophomore too, but he was one of those backs that you heard a lot at the youth level. Like, this could be another star tailback at Wilson. So I'm excited to see what he does, not only this season, but moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. And he was, I believe, the only freshman that was brought up last year.
That's right.
He saw time, obviously, in the JV games, but he had a lot of opportunities in the varsity games. Played really well against, I think it was McCaskey. Had a lot of opportunities there. And you can see, I mean, you saw it in basketball. You know that it's going to, parts of that athleticism translate to the football field. And I know what he was able to do at middle school. And he looks to be a huge part of what's going to be happening at Gursky and hopefully many other LL and District 3 stadiums on Friday nights this fall. But yeah, he had a great scrimmage. Things looked to be to going through him. I think they really wanted to feature him. We've heard for years how running backs like to get in a groove. The more touches they get, the more they feel the game. And it would be nice to see that trio get going. But I think Akins is going to end up being the guy in that backfield. It wouldn't surprise me in the least if he's definitely the number one guy. It'll be interesting to see what happens when we get to our first game this Friday, and a big one, a huge one. Roman Catholic, 5A school. First added them on the schedule last year. They came to Gursky. Wilson opened up, actually punched them in the mouth a little bit, opened up a 12-0 lead, but it was a long game, and things got out of hand near the end of the third quarter. Fourth quarter unraveled with some turnovers leading to quick points.
And Paul mentioned depth earlier at the,
right.
The depth quickly became an issue in that Roman Catholic game last year due to attrition to a number of reasons. But
there were injuries, there was heat related,
right?
Cramping.
Wilson had some guys. We were burning through the depth chart pretty quick in that game for lots of reasons, and none of it helped. It was not helping.
Yeah, I mean that team. I think I just said this. I think last year Roman Catholic had 13 Division I players. I'm pulling that number from my memory of last year's preview. That I could be completely wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure it was at least double. It was double digits, if not more than a dozen. 13 jumped into my head. Now, obviously, some of those have moved on. I don't remember his name, but the offensive tackle went to Kentucky. Paul, do you remember his name?
I don't. The big news this year is Tyseer Denmark is not there.
No, he is not.
So he's an interesting story at both the high school and then looking ahead to college level because he's an ESPN top 300 player who had originally committed to Oregon and decommitted, and now he's going to stay in Pennsylvania and go to Penn State. And everyone thought this summer he would be back at Roman, and he had a very good game. He had 6 catches. He had a touchdown against Wilson last year. He is now at Imhotep. So talk about the rich getting richer. I mean, Imhotep is a 5A powerhouse. In fact, they knocked off Roman in the playoffs. That's the game that ended Roman's season. But Denmark is now at Imhotep, so he will not be in this matchup on Friday. They still have Jaja Boyd, who is another ESPN top 300 athlete who's committed to James Madison. But he had offers from some bigger Division I schools, but he is committed to James Madison. Their quarterback is back.
He's only a sophomore.
Yeah,
too.
yeah. I mean, they have a lot of speed.
Samaj Beals. Right.
Right. Just a couple days ago, a all-public league defensive end announced on social media that he is attending Roman Catholic. He was at Northeast High School. Toombs is his last name. He's a 230-pound defensive end. So,
is that all?
Yeah. So, might be a player to watch. Yeah, sometimes with the Catholic League, it's kind of like, MLB trade deadline day. Your players are going every which way. It's hard to kind of keep track. But Roman's going to put a lot of speed on the field. They did get a couple defensive scores in the fourth quarter. Wilson was only down 11 going to the fourth quarter, and then
and with 3 minutes to play, I think it was like a 4-point game. It was like 20-16 or something with 3 minutes left in the third, and things unraveled.
I will say though that the stats, like if you look at the yards, it was 300 plus advantage for Roman.
And one of Wilson's touchdowns was
a return.
Cameron's return. Right.
Yeah, the biggest thing, looking back on the game, researching it, was I had forgot how dominant they were on the ground, which was surprising to me because I remember it being surprising last year, and I kind of had forgotten about it. And then when I looked at the stats, was it Mal Howe? Was that his name? Mal Howe and Jameer Robertson, I want to say, the two running backs. Both were seniors, so both have graduated and moved on, but I believe they both combined for close to, if not over, 250 rushing yards.
Yeah, Robertson, even more than that. Okay. So Robertson was 161, and Howell was 153. So over 300 yards on the ground. And Howell had 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, Howell was the one, and he was the two-way running back linebacker. He just seemed involved every single play. Howell was the guy. And then if they needed some kind of electric performance, that's when they went to Denmark.
Yeah.
So they had a lot going for them, and obviously they're another program that's just able to reload. But they lost Denmark to the transfer to Imhotep. They lost. I cannot remember the offensive tackle's name. He went to Kentucky. Jameel Lyons is now wearing blue and white at Penn State. So they had big blue chip guys graduate, move on, or transfer, but. Like I said, last year going into the game, there was a baker's dozen of them on the team. Not all of them are gone. There's a lot of talent left at Roman Catholic, so the cupboards are certainly not bare. It should be an interesting game with the group that Wilson has coming back on offense. Hopefully things can get going a little bit more. At the time, Cam Jones was not the featured back. He was making his name still in returns, defensive star, and they wanted to work him in at receiver. But then Cleveland Harding got injured, and that's what prompted Cam Jones to move into the running back position. But like you said, he's not there, and we got to see guys step up. So this is not a show where we make predictions about games. We're just previewing them, so we're not going to get into that. But Roman Catholic this Friday, August 25th, that game is at Upper Dublin.
Yes.
So don't try to find a field at Roman Catholic. You're not going to find it.
You will not find one. No,
you won't find
it is
one.
Right downtown, right off of Broad Street.
So, yes, Upper Dublin is the location for the Wilson Roman Catholic game. Again, that's this Friday. That kickoff is at 7 o'clock. But we'll get to a game here shortly that is not at 7 o'clock. So we want people to make sure they get there for the kickoff. But yes, this Friday, kickoff of the 2023 season, Wilson at Roman Catholic. And that is being played at Upper Dublin. So the entire schedule for Wilson this year, just like last year, alternates home and away. So Wilson comes back home Labor Day weekend, Friday, September 1st, Gursky Stadium, and that is against their Mid-Penn rival in Central Dauphin. They've been playing them regular season every year since 2014, save for the wacky COVID year. And they've each team's kind of had hot and cold streaks. Wilson started off strong, winning actually twice in 2014 when they started this regular season matchup. They beat them the opening game, and then also, or not the opening game, I think it was the third game at that time. They beat them early in the season and then beat them in the district championship. Then Central Dauphin rattled off a bunch of wins in a row. I think it actually 4. I think they won in 2015, 2016, 2017, and 2018. Before Wilson got the victory in 2019. COVID year watched the game out, but Wilson won in 21 and 22. So the Bulldogs are riding a 3-game winning streak against Central Dauphin. Wasn't a prototypical Central Dauphin team last year. They struggled mightily, finished, I believe it was 3-7. But by the end of the year, they were down to, I think, their 4th string quarterback.
And I feel like they lost a number of really close games or contested games if they didn't end up really close. I think they lost to Coatesville by a touchdown last year. They lost some games that they could have won, and they had lots of injuries and all kinds of stuff going on. So yeah, purely by record, they were not what we've come to expect out of Central Dauphin. But in that game last year, Wilson was going in there already bruised up from the Roman Catholic game, and Central Dauphin gave them everything they could handle.
It was a close game last year. Yeah. It was not one that was a runaway either. 17-10 was the final last year at Speed Eversol Stadium, and Central Dauphin, their quarterback, the quarterback we faced, the one that was the starter, is back for another season. But it'll be interesting to see if they adjust the offensive scheme, if they try to remain ground and pound, because we saw one of their Mid-Penn rivals, Cumberland Valley, switch things in the last few years with Oswald getting there. But we know that Central Dauphin wants to run the ball. They're just very similar to Wilson. Not exactly the same offensive system, but despite Wilson opening up a little bit more, Wilson still wants to run the ball.
Even with the struggles that they had, I say struggles, just hard season last year. They still, when Wilson played them, it was still exactly what you expect out of Central Dauphin. They're going to make you drive the length of the field. They're going to basically, it always seems like they're going to essentially be you're going to have to run 10 plays to score without making a mistake. Because if you make a mistake, either we're going to take the ball or you're going to, have a false start or do something. It's going to set you behind, and your 3 or 4 yards of play isn't going to get you what you need. And they're going to make you earn it. And they're not afraid to do that on offense either. Look, we'll take our 4 or 5 yards. We'll take our 4 or 5 yards. We'll take our 4 or 5 yards. We're going to run the play action to the tight end down the middle for 60. And then,
that one still haunts me, 2016.
And so,
2015.
So, it's just, they're going to make you earn it in every sense of the word. And they're going to line up, and it's going to be a physical game. And, and it's not easy coming out of Roman Catholic, even, not even knowing what that will hold this year. But, it's not an easy first game. Oh, it's a tremendous task the first game, and then you've got a really tough game the second game too.
Yeah, Roman presents a lot of speed, and Central Dauphin usually presents a lot of power, a lot of physical strength, and they are one of those teams that I would call them a dead under team. Okay, if we're talking about the NFL, they are just fine winning 13-10.
Oh yeah.
They have no qualms about that, but they usually play smash mouth football. And for people who aren't familiar with Mid-Penn Commonwealth, they went 3-7. And you guys were right. The Coatesville game, they only lost by 6. It was 34-28 right after they lost to Wilson 17-10. But, they're playing State College. They're playing Carlisle. They're playing Cumberland Valley. They're playing CD East, who they lost to 35-0. And then Harrisburg, who they lost to 42-7. And Harrisburg's going to be very good again this year, and coming off a district championship where they beat Manheim Township in the final. But that's the schedule for Central Dauphin, and then non-league, not only Wilson, Coatesville, Central York.
Yeah,
I mean,
they basically are playing the District 3
Just a
playoff
bunch of
field. The
pushovers.
6A playoff field is their season.
They're non-conference.
Right.
They're non-league. Yeah. Well, Wilson was like that in 2014. We essentially duplicated our non-league slate in the playoffs again. We played like the same teams over and over again. Wacky how that works out sometimes.
But Cam came up huge in the game last year, so then he got the bulk of the carries against CD at over 100 yards at a 50-yard touchdown in that game.
Yeah, the scoring opened early. Well, I think first drive, Hunsaker to Case was nice to see. Tommy have a bounce back game. Look good, settled in that showing. And then, like you said, they really featured Cam, and he had an electrifying 52-yard. I'm not even sure if that was a rush or a pass. I've seen it listed both because I think it was a swing, and I don't know if he was in front of the ball or behind the ball. So was it a toss or was it a forward pass? But yeah, it was a great play nonetheless. But Central Dauphin made them earn it, as they did for a lot of the teams they played last year, despite their record. It's not always indicative of the strength of the team. One play here or there can change a game and change your season. So no team in the Wilson Central Dolphins series has scored over 28 points since. I wish I wouldn't have started that sentence. Since the district championship game in 2002.
You want to revisit that one?
No, I don't want to revisit that. So it's always a low-scoring affair. They're very tight.
No one's been over 28 points in 21 years.
Well, they haven't played that much.
Right, okay.
Right, it's really been like the last decade.
Yeah,
that
but
they've
it's
really
not
been
like
playing.
we're saying like over 40 points or 35.
No, it's 28,
Yeah.
So, so
Between teams that are perennial playoff teams, these are teams that can put up in the 30s more often than not.
yeah. So the winner has scored since that 2002 game that was 35-33. Then 2011 was the next meeting. Central Dauphin scored 24. Then Wilson scored 14. Wilson scored 21. Central Dauphin scored 20. Central Dauphin scored 24. Central Dauphin scored 28. Central Dauphin scored 23. Then Wilson 21. Wilson 27. Wilson 17.
Yeah.
So
it's a dead under game.
That's right. So we'll see what happens
for amusement
this year.
Purposes only.
Of course. So that's Friday, September 1st, Central Dauphin. That is youth night at Wilson. So the little kids will be there to cheer on the big kids. It's always a fun night for that game and the home opener. So the next week, Wilson heads back down towards the Philadelphia area on Friday, September 8th. Again, this is not being played at the home of the Martin Luther King Cougars.
No.
This is being played at the Germantown Super Site, which is Benjamin Johnston Stadium. Yeah. And that game kicks off at 6:30. So that's the most important takeaway for you right there is it's not at Martin Luther King. It is at the Germantown Super Site. You can look for Benjamin Johnston Stadium.
Yeah, it's on the map. So like if you put that in like Google Maps or Apple Maps or whatever you're using, it'll pop up.
Is this where Wyomissing played
Yes,
Newman Goretti?
it is,
Okay,
yes,
so
it
I
is.
was there covering that
So you know where to go.
state semifinal.
So I know you're going to the game.
Yeah, you covering that one?
Yeah, I think the turf was put in 74.
I heard it was actually 1874. So
Yeah, talk to the Wyomissing staff sometime about the facilities there. But
we'll find out firsthand.
Yeah. I'll leave that alone.
So so 6:30. 6:30
Well,
at
we've
Germantown.
caught a break because is this the fourth time we've played them? Or the third time?
Third
Okay,
time.
third time. But they came to us the first two. Yeah.
Yeah. So Martin Luther King came to Wilson in 2021 and in 2022. We are returning the favor and going to their area for the matchup in 2023. Wilson's won the first two meetings.
I was trying to get us to throw in free Mays sandwiches.
I know, and tell them to come back up
make
here.
them come up. Okay,
Come
you
back,
come up here,
come
we'll
back.
feed you. Yeah.
We would love to have a 6-game home slate. I'm sure the athletic office would like a 6-game home slate too. It's like Warwick this year has a 7-game home slate. Now, to be fair,
Yeah.
they had a 2-game home slate
Right.
last year.
Yeah, it was bizarre.
With the stadium, the area, the renovations going on there. But no, 5-5 for Wilson. 5 home games, 5 away games. Away game 2 is down at Germantown Superstate. Martin Luther King. Wilson won the game last year, 37-0. Martin Luther King, since 2019, when I think they went 9-1, has really struggled the last few years. It was tough, obviously, on them the COVID year in 2020. Then they haven't been able to get things back on track 2021 and 2022. So we'll see what this game produces in 2023. But again, that is down at the Benjamin L. Johnston Memorial Stadium, the Germantown Superstate, for a 6:30 kickoff. Now Wilson is going to return home.
Let me know, by the way, if the uprights are still
I heard
like
they're a
that.
little jankety. They're not exactly level. So we'll see. We'll have to let Ben Rada know about that. That get him prepared that he might have to kick off a level. We'll see if he can angle things. But the next week is back in West Lawn at Gursky to take on crosstown rival Reading on September 15th. That will be the Wilson Football Tradition Club's annual event, and this year is actually going to be honoring the career of of Chad Henne. So Chad Henne night.
Who's that?
Yeah, I hadn't heard of him before. I had to do a lot of research.
Is that the guy in the commercial with Pat Mahomes?
With Pat Mahomes, yeah. But with the food establishment, we don't mention on
Yeah.
the show. So I let Chad know that I was I had mixed feelings about this. But no, we're gonna have fun. Gates are gonna open at 5:30, and Chad's has graciously agreed to do a meet and greet with fans and sign some autographs, take some pictures, and we're gonna honor him at halftime, read some career accomplishments, and just give him heap some praise from the local community that he got to play in front of for 4 years. So we're looking forward to that event. Again, that's against Reading on September 15th. More details about the event will be coming out closer to the time.
Just be careful of a delay of game penalty. If you read all his accomplishments at halftime, it might go a little bit long.
I told you, I know we only got 5 minutes. I'll make sure that Kevin Venino's got the stuff and that he's zipping through it. So yeah, it's gonna be fun though, and against Reading, it just worked out that way that it's against Reading, but obviously Henne and Wilson's relationship while he was the quarterback, 2-2. That was a 2-2 series. He got the wins as a freshman, which everyone remembers that game, considered one of the greatest Berks football games in history.
That was my. This is different than the school I went to before moment. Like
not the same as Columbia.
Right. This is different than single A football. Moment. Like I mean, actually,
you didn't see me any James and Sam Bryants
when I walked into the room
at Columbia.
When the crowd at that game is equal to the population of the town I used to live in. I'm just like, wow, this is a little different.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be a fun night playing against Reading. Reading's an interesting team. I know they lost a lot of production last year from a few of their basketball players and Rodriguez and Berdine. That was 2 big guys, but I know they had a young and developing lineman coming through the program, and Coach Troy, now in his second year, getting that program in a footing that people want to see from 20 years ago. That's what people would love to see, Reading Wilson become what it was at that time. So
I just remember in that game last year, you just saw like Ruben and stuff like make plays and stuff, and you're like, oh yeah, there's the Division I athlete right there. He just
wide receiver of the year in the
Right.
last 11
right,
league.
like just seeing him, and yes, Wilson, across the board was. Has more experience and was able to get the job done, but it wasn't. I mean, it was close through the first quarter, like into the second quarter.
It was tied at the end of the first quarter. It was
right,
nothing.
because they're
And
right,
then
like
I think Wilson scored 35 or 42 in the second.
yeah, it got out of control. But I think there were some kick return or some punt returns. There was a
block.
there
was a block.
So
Yeah,
it
was like in a hurry.
2 rushing touchdowns, I believe, by Cam. Then a punt return for a touchdown, then a blocked punt for a touchdown, and then another punt return for a touchdown. And that pretty much put the game away.
Right.
But yeah, that first quarter, everyone was like, whoa.
Right. Well,
This is
right.
not what
right.
everyone
You
was
could see
expecting.
the guys who were going to get it done for Reading were giving Wilson everything they could
Oh,
handle.
it was a back and forth game in the first 12 minutes, and everyone was like, "This is not going as well as we had hoped." And then things changed in the second, and Wilson was able to put that game away, 48-6. Reading hasn't won a game in the series now. I know there was a 10-year hiatus, but since Chad's senior year in 2003, that's the last Red Knight win over the Bulldogs on the gridiron.
And Coach Goddardine was on that team.
Yep.
Often was overlooked just because of the star power that Reading High had then when Al Walski was the head coach and they were rolling. They got to a district final, lost to Cumberland Valley at Hershey Park Stadium. But, those were the years you had James Bryant, you had Sam Bryant, you had Lamar Stewart, you had Jason Polson, you had Khalees Cook. Those two could fly. And Troy was, a linebacker with over 100 tackles as a senior, went to Mansfield, and then eventually, unfortunately, they ended their program, but was a really good linebacker. And I think the kids really like him. He's a high-energy guy. I was at one of their 7-on-7s over at Albright, and they do now, obviously, they're not involved in the 7-on-7s, but they have some mammoth linemen. I mean, that are 315, 350 neighborhood, and one's starting to get some Division I interest right now. But I really think they're not sure about the quarterback just yet. Obviously, Amir Berdine, you mentioned, Joe, he's now at Sacred Heart. He'll play defensive back there. And then Ruben Rodriguez is at Ryder, of course, for Hoops. But, was a big-time wide receiver, and for a guy who that was his second sport.
Right,
I mean,
right.
you could see the athleticism that he had there. So that's a lot of firepower. Now, they're still young, so they have 7 starters back on offense. But keep this in mind. Last year, Reading had 21 sophomores on the roster. So I really think they're looking, obviously you want to be successful every year, but I really think they're looking a little bit to 2024. Mm-hmm. Now, the coaches and players would never say that, but there are a lot of juniors that are going to get substantial playing time this year for Reading. But I just think the energy is a little bit better. In Section 1, it's still going to be tough. I mean, you have Wilson Township, Hempfield. It's not going to be easy.
They prove they can do it. We've seen what they can do when they get the right coach, the right system, and the players buying into the program. And that run they had in the early 2000s was really good. I mean, you just rattled off all those names.
And Gabriel
really
Laws is a player to watch for them. He had over a dozen tackles for loss last year. He'll play linebacker, and he's only a junior. He's part of that junior class, but he's also on the track and field team there, so he's a guy to watch on that Friday.
Well, and you mentioned it, Paul. There's been some rough go of it since the early 2000s for Reading, but the coach there now, he knows as good as anyone what it's going to take in that situation to get closer to where they want to be, and like you said, having young guys buy in, having young guys come back, I hope it maintained it. Honestly, after we play them, it's not as much on the radar, but it seemed like it felt different there last year, again, we hadn't been there for a long time for a game, but it felt like there was some optimism around the team and program, and that's what it takes to keep guys coming back, to keep the support and keep those young guys coming in working, and then you can kind of establish yourself, and hopefully that's what's going for them. Obviously, I'm always pulling for Wilson, but Section 1 is better and more interesting when Reading is good.
Same with McCaskey.
Exactly, and whether we're talking competing for district championships is a lofty, but if we get into the competing for playoff spots or right around 500, it's better when those teams are better, and so I wish them success in that endeavor.
And he's added some experienced assistant coaches on his staff too. I was talking to Coach Leamer a lot at the 7-on-7. He was at Berks Catholic. His son played there when they were really rolling, and they had a ton of talent. So he's been around some winning programs. And also, Coach Godinay is in the school. He works in the school, which was not the case under the previous head coach. So that makes a big difference.
It makes the world of a difference, absolutely. So Wilson's next destination will be Earl Boltz Stadium on September 22nd to tangle with Lebanon School Cedar Crest. The Falcons went 5-5 last year. Wilson got the win, however. Of course, that was at Gursky Stadium, 36-13. Like Reading, Cedar Crest is searching for their first win against the Bulldogs in 20-plus years. Also a game I was involved in. September 21st, 2001, Cedar Crest ended Wilson's, I think it was 7-year unbeaten streak at Gursky, shutting out the Bulldogs 21-0 in 2001. Definitely a game I'd like to forget. Much like that Central Dauphin game that has already come up. So
it's like a little therapy session for Joe here today.
Yeah, so Wilson Cedar Crest, that'll be game 5, September 22nd. We're going to move on here because I know we got a lot to talk about with this next one. Governor Mifflin finally coming back to Wilson. Haven't been there in a few years with the wonky scheduling, playing in Shillington back-to-back years. I know the seniors last year were really disappointed with that, but I think they're okay with the result because last year Wilson beat Mifflin 32-14 at Mifflin. But it wasn't that long ago that Mifflin was winning back-to-back games, including the COVID season at Gursky Stadium, and I know that's another one that many Wilson people would like to forget. So this group has a chance to rattle off back-to-back wins against the Mustangs, led by Jeff Lang. Paul, what do you see with the Mustangs this year?
And real quick note on Cedar Crest, player to watch there is Aiden Schomp, who's a 6'6", 230-pound tight end. I've seen him in basketball, had 4 touchdown catches a year ago. So he'll be the really tall, big kid for Cedar Crest. It'll be easy to find. For Mifflin, I think Coach Lang feels, honestly, that they're going to bounce back. I mean, last year was rough, and, they're another team. The schedule's tough. I mean, they're playing
Springford week 1.
Springford, Wilson, Carlisle, non-league. I mean, it's
District
tough
1 and
sledding.
District 3 playoff teams.
Yeah,
there.
But I think this team seems. I mean, if you're a believer in chemistry, and how the team bonds and things like that, the impression that I've got from several people is that this group gets along a lot better than a year ago. And up front, they have some players, and they have. I'll give you a couple guys that are going to be back next year too. Gavin Kelly, who plays center, and also Presley Rinker. I was just over there for another one of the Time to Grind segments that we do for SV Sports, and these guys they kind of look like the old Oakland Raiders back then. I mean, their hair's or like an AC/DC or Metallica concert. I mean, their hair's past their shoulders, but these are strong guys that I think are going to play college football. I don't know at what level. And then also Torre, who's gotten a lot bigger physically, and he's another kid. He'll play college football somewhere. I'm not quite sure where. There was some talk about him playing tight end. I think he's going to move to offensive tackle. So you will have him, Rinker, and Kelly on the offensive line. And they have a bunch of backs who are returning. Brandon Jones is going to be back. Garner's going to be back. We know they want to run the football.
Jones is the one last year, he was the one that I focused on last year. He was the guy that stood out to me when they were running the ball, but really on defense. He flew around at linebacker, and I looked and I was like, oh, he's a junior. He's back next year. So Jones is the one that I think he's poised for a big year for the Mustangs.
Yeah, and Garner's brothers were very good players over there. He also does track and field. So they'll mix up the carries. They did lose depth up front with a couple defensive linemen who transferred out of the program. But I still think, with the guys that I mentioned, Rinker, Kelly, Toure, those are three solid players up front. So, it's the system's not going to change at all. They're still going to try and, run the football. But I think they'll be more competitive this year.
Have they settled on a quarterback?
No, they haven't. Bryce Wunderlich is a good baseball player for Governor Mifflin. I saw their 7-on-7 against Wyomissing, which just in principle made me chuckle a little bit. Like, here I'm at a 7-on-7 with Wyomissing, who runs a wing T, and Governor Mifflin, who's an option, a veer midline type of team. It's like,
how much are we getting out of
yeah.
this?
Yeah. They only use the linemen and the running backs.
Yeah.
They don't bring wide receivers.
Yeah, sometimes I joke with the coaches, like, sneak in a draw here just to
Keep the linebackers honest.
Yeah, run a buck sweep, just for humor's sake. But it could be Wunderlich. They also have a wide receiver in Johnson, who's a basketball player he's at least 6'3". Again, I don't know. He's not a speedster. I don't know how much they're going to throw it again. But I think they'll be better than they were a year ago. It may not show a ton in wins and losses just because of the schedule. And again, they're in Section 2. We talked a lot last year because it was the first year with the new alignment. All the Berks teams coming in. Wilson, of course, had already been in, but all the other Berks teams. So Section 2, you have Exeter, Manheim Central at the top, and you also have Warwick in there.
Right.
And Manheim Central is
loaded.
Going to be really good. And Exeter did lose a ton, especially up front. Anthony Kachazy's at Delaware, but Lash, Palange, those guys moved up. Schlaffer's at Penn State. But Section 2, where Mifflin is, it's
no joke.
It's
not easy.
Section 2 is it's a gauntlet down there. Interesting to see who comes out of that. I do think Manheim Central's got to be the favorite just based on what they have returning. I think they're restocking the linemen, but their skills set guys, quarterback, running back, wide receivers, linebacker, DBs, all very, very good. So I'm sure they'll find the linemen. I think they'll be okay.
Yeah.
I don't think you have to worry about the Barons. But it'll be interesting to see who is their main challenger. Is it still Exeter? I think it's going to be.
I would agree.
I don't think it'll be Warwick or Mifflin. I think they're the next tier down. I think it's an Exeter Manheim Central race, and
Warwick has a quarterback change too.
Right.
And Jack Reed, who went to Shippensburg. So Trevor Evans is going to take over.
He was a wide receiver.
Yeah, yep. I talked to him at the LA League Media Day, and he's looking forward to it. But yeah, he's going to be moving to quarterback there. So Warwick was 5-5 a year ago, 4-2 in the league. I would still say Exeter's, probably going to be the biggest challenge for Manheim Central. Exeter won it last year. They went down there and beat them.
They were able to squash that Manheim Magic.
Yeah,
didn't get that last year. What a shame. So
I'm sensing some sarcasm.
Yeah, there's a lot of sarcasm there.
Would you like a Three Musketeers?
I might need it. I won't pull up the video from 1998 and the rain game and Jeff Smoker. We won't bring that up. Which I know Trevor Vaughn would love if I played that video of that 1998 game down in Manheim. But I will abstain from that. But Wilson was able to exercise their Mustang demons last year. They got all of Nick Singleton in that team for 2 years in a row. Like Justin and I said, as soon as Wilson was done playing Mifflin in 2021, we were happy to be on the right side of the Nick Singleton train.
I had so
State.
much more fun watching him run last year than the previous years.
How crazy is it, though? And you think about, Berks County, is not a large area, really. The city of Reading is certainly one of the biggest cities in the state, but you're looking at this Berks County Penn State connection now with Singleton, who's there, and had a phenomenal freshman season and could be a star this year, although they do mix up the carries there. But Schlaffer's there now from Exeter. Jaden Williams is there from Wyomissing. Caleb Brewer has already committed there. He's still, got this year coming up at Wyomissing. I mean, these are high-level kids to come out of Berks County. If you're a youngster, I mean, you don't have to go far to look for players that have come from your area and have made it to, one of the top programs in the nation.
Let's keep that pipeline. I'm happy about that. I might not always get to see them on the field if they're not in, 6A and Wilson doesn't get to play them, but I'm always very happy when Berks County athletes go to play anything for the Nittany Lions, and it's been fun talking to Coach Steve O'Neill at Wyomissing about Javen and Caleb and just a great group of guys over there. I'm excited to see. I'm hoping for a good recovery from Riker Jones, and he can get back out there because, man, he was fun to watch. I saw 3 Wyomissing games last year doing photography, and I got to call the district championship game for Penn Live, and those games were a lot of fun to watch. Looking forward to another big season from a ton of Berks programs. It seems to be very high quality football coming out of Berks County right now throughout all levels of the section in the new LL Berks League. So Wilson vanquished Mifflin last year. We'll see what happens this year. Then the biggest one last year was the showdown with Hempfield. That happened at Gursky. Wilson, for the first time in a while, came out on the losing end against the Black Knights. I think it was their first loss to Hempfield since 2005, and it was Hempfield's first LL section crown since that season as well, but they shared it, and it was their first outright title since 1994, which I believe is also the last time Hempfield had beaten Wilson at Gursky. Well, it wasn't even Gursky then, at Wilson Football Stadium. They graduated a lot. Hempfield lost a lot. Still got a couple big names back, though.
Yeah. Lost a lot on defense. So, and that was another 7-on-7 that I saw. Hempfield actually did one at Wyomissing. So I got a chance to go over there. Now, Jackson Landis, the quarterback, was not there that day, or Mikey Gates. But that's
their 1-2 punch.
Right. Those are two guys to know for sure. Landis at quarterback threw for almost 1,800 yards last season, and he had 13 rushing touchdowns, not even counting how many he threw. So he can beat you with he didn't rush for a ton of yards, but he got in the end zone a lot. And they had quite a receiving core last year. I mean, they really spread it around. 3 of those guys graduated, but Gates is back from last
home run
year.
Hitter.
Yeah,
he put up big numbers against Wilson. He had 124 yards and a 58-yard touchdown to open the second half. So,
yeah. And then everybody knows by now about David Polly, who is headed to USC. Had a Penn State offer. He does have Samoan heritage, so I think that was a factor in his decision to go out to USC. But it was funny because I see him listed anywhere from like 270, 280. That day when I spoke to Coach Egger, who spent some time at Wilson, of course, as an assistant, and always raves about Coach Doms and the staff, what a first class operation Wilson is. But he told me that day that Polly was 320, and when you watch him move, though. I mean, he moves like he's like 275. I mean, he's not like a slug out there. So he was all-state selection as a junior. So he'll be back. But I want to see what they are like defensively because only 2 starters are back. I think the whole linebacking core and the secondary is going to be new.
What, do you think Gates or Landis will play 2As?
A lot of coaches don't like putting the quarterback
usually
there.
Your quarterbacks don't.
It's rare to do that.
The one that I'm glad is gone is Grant Hoover because
feel
like he was a guy last year that just when they needed to get a few yards, he got.
Yeah, he ran tough.
He was a tough guy to bring down, and maybe that I don't know how the entire season went, but at Gursky that night he was tough to bring down. Hempfield got beat up in that game against Wilson, and then next week got to take on Exeter, who also beat them up pretty good. And Hempfield was able to get it done the last 2 weeks against a few other LL1 opponents to win the section outright. But then they had they were scraping and fighting in the district playoffs, and their power ran out. They got beat up, I think, by Township.
Yeah, and it was not close.
Yeah,
it was a blowout. Yeah.
To end their season. But Justin and I, when we say it all the time, like a broken record, when George Eager went there, well, he was already there, but when he got the top job there, we were like, that's not good.
Yeah, we were like, oh, not a fan. The problem is we are fans.
We are a
of
fan.
George.
Yeah.
Like
George is great.
we knew George was good, and that was probably going to be a really good fit. And we'd been referring to them as a sleeping giant for years. They woke up last year, and that's not cool. But
don't like
but
that.
I mean, good for him, good for George, and that program. Again, Section 1 as a whole is better and more interesting when Hempfield is there competing. This is a Wilson-centric show, obviously. So, okay, I guess we need that. But
yeah, so Wilson Hempfield is Game 7, just like it was last year. It'll be down in Landisville at George Ellis Law Firm Stadium. I know the team is looking for their 1-mile hike to and from their locker room.
Little cardio. Got to get your steps in, Joe.
So it should be good. But yeah, Landis and Gates are the names to know, at least on offense for Hempfield, and Polly also two-way monster.
Mike Schaefer's another good player up front.
So yeah, Hempfield cover's not bare, but they're definitely of the 3 contenders in Section 1, at least the ones that have been talked about as the contenders. Justin and I don't anoint anyone, just putting that out there. Hempfield, Wilson, and Manheim Township. It seemed like Hempfield needed to restock the most. They had the most losses graduation-wise.
Yeah.
And Polly flirted with IMG. Imagine what they would be facing if he had left too. But he's back at Hempfield ready to go. So I'm not going to talk too much about this next one. It's a home game for Wilson, October 13th against Penn Manor. That will be, I believe, that's Wilson's homecoming game. The Bulldogs have never lost to the Penn Manor Comets. Wilson won down at Millersville, actually back-to-back years for Wilson at Penn Manor.
that was the game where Case got involved in the return game as well a little
Yeah,
bit last year.
not only did he flip it to Cam for Cam's, I think that might have been his last return touchdown, because then I don't think anyone gave an opportunity after that game. But Case then fielded a punt, had a great return. He actually had a fumble recovery for a touchdown. And it would be the next week that Case took a punt back for a touchdown against McCaskey. So, so Wilson won that game last year down at Penn Manor, 56-7. Comets coach John Brubaker, he got him to 5-5 last year. I feel like that's probably what they're looking at this year. What about you, Paul? What do you think?
Player to watch there again is the tight end position, just like we talked about with Cedar Crest with Aiden Schomp. Demir Wesley is the tight end at Penn Manor. We talked about that 7-on-7 that Wilson hosted, where about 15, 16 teams were there. Penn Manor was there that day. He's a big kid, and he committed to Villanova, which has obviously a really good football program. He was a first-team tight end last season in Section 1 of the LL, and he was second team on the defensive side. So he's the guy that you're going to watch for Penn Manor. But I think you're right. Like, if you want to put things in tiers, sometimes we see this with like quarterbacks in the NFL. The first tier, Wilson Township, Hempfield, and then Penn Manor, Cedar Crest were both 5-5 a year ago. So I put them. I don't think they're ready to be in that first tier, but it's good to see. They're competitive, and to be 500 when you play in that section, it's not bad.
And they did was it Warwick? So they upset someone last year on a last-second bomb touchdown.
I thought they beat Warwick the week before we played them. I thought.
Well, I can't recall, but I know they beat someone that was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Penn Manor did what? Hey, I remember a decade ago when they had Charlie Bell. And, and Dalton Palmer. And
Cody Booth before that.
You could see them building 2010, 2011, and they were so good in 2012 and 2013. They couldn't get the Bulldog hump off their back, though.
I remember getting to the game late one time and watching Dominic Negrelli running in for a defensive score. And
that was the 2012
and
game.
I'm
that
just
was
like,
the,
oh my gosh.
Yep,
like,
that was Timochenko's first start. We talked about Matt a little bit earlier, and that was his first start of that year, and it was like game 7 or something, 7 or 8, and the deciding score was a Dominic Negrelli fumble or interception.
I don't even know.
I can't remember now. It might have been a pick. But either way, he took it back to the house, and I think Wilson ended up winning 14-7.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was funny to get involved with the. That was like towards the beginning of when I started to get involved with the Wilson program again, just a few years into it. And Penn Manor had always not been a good team. Like Wilson always usually mopped the floor with them. They were not good. To have Penn Manor rise and be the team for a few years that was competitive. It was fun. It's interesting when you cycle through the teams. It's fun to see a program like that respond and have a few good
Is
years.
it 32-0 now? Wilson against Penn Manor?
That's what I have it as, 32-0. So it's 30 plus. So I don't like stats like that. That one scares me. Every year it comes up before we play. I don't like that one. That feels like you're playing with. Some,
better than 0-32.
Well, it's sure. Yeah, I'd rather be on that side of it, but I don't like that one. So, all right, Justin's favorite. We're going back to Lancaster, down to McCaskey this year.
Hey, all right. Maybe we'll get some McDonald's.
Always. The McDonald's right off of the
Splurging
McCaskey
for Mickey D's.
It's our favorite stop.
Well, we weren't going to get to go to the Sugar Bowl this year.
That's right.
But I went during youth lacrosse season when Austin played at Penn Manor. I'm like, hey, buddy, you hungry? He was like, not really. I'm like, that's okay.
Well,
we're going for lunch.
Sugar Bowl time. So, yeah, we actually, as has been the tradition now, unfortunately, Justin couldn't make it in 2021. Yeah. But the previous time we were there, and then last year, we went to the Sugar Bowl before and after the game. Bookended meals.
And it's funny because now, like, people show up and they're like, "Oh, you guys are here." We're
right.
like, "Yeah, no, it's not. It's not a bit. Like, we're actually here." Yeah.
And they're getting they get free advertising from us every time we go down to Millersville. But we're not going to Millersville this year. We're going to McCaskey though, to play the Red Tornado. Coach Ben Thompson. They won their first game last year, then lost 9 in a row. Finished 1-9. This is another team that's searching for 20-plus years for a win against Wilson. They haven't won since that same season that Reading beat Wilson back in 2003. Last year, Wilson beat McCaskey 63-7. Paul, anything to say about the Red Tornado?
I do have an interview with Coach Thompson. If you go to svsports.com and look under the local sports tab, which is something that we just started last fall in October. So you'll see a ton of interviews there, and there will be a half dozen more coming up this week. If you want to find out more about LL players there in all the different sections, you can check out interviews there, and they're pretty in depth. It's not just a soundbite here or there. You'll get 3, 4, 5 minutes with either the player or the coach, but there you'll see the one with Coach Thompson, who played at Coatesville, then went to Florida A&M, eventually graduated from Cheney. But he talked a lot about, I liked his perspective in that he wants the kids involved in the community. He wants to teach them about McCaskey's history. I mean, we know recent history is not good. I mean, they've had a lot of down years, but just like we were talking about some of these other programs like Reading, there was a time when McCaskey was absolutely loaded, and same time Chad Henne was at Wilson. I mean, that to me was really the golden age of Section 1 of the Lancaster Lebanon League. But they had Perry Patterson, who ended up going to Syracuse. They had Danny Melendez, who went to Maryland to play receiver. Nequan Lee went to Delaware, who was their running back. Cedar Crest at the time had Jaron Hayes.
Yeah, just a Purdue quarterback and a Michigan State running back.
Two Big Ten players there, quarterback and running back. We ran down all those players who were at Reading, and people obviously know what Wilson had then with Chad and company. So those games every week you were getting a game that felt like it was a District 3 semi or championship game. So he's trying to remind the players of the history of the school and keep them motivated. And he did. It was funny. He said kind of with a grin, he's like, "We're gonna chuck it a lot." So I think the ball will be up in the air a lot for them. He likes the skill position players that they have. They are going to have a new quarterback this year.
Well, yeah, 4-year starter's gone, right?
Yeah. So they last year they only won one game. They won their opener against John Bartram from Philly. They went down there and beat Bartram, and then did not win another game. But I just kind of liked his perspective a little bit. He was interim coach 1 year, and now this will be his second full year.
Yeah, when he took over, now.
It
was
was
right.
crazy.
Yeah, it was right at the beginning of August.
Yeah, their other coach took a college job,
Was that Sam London?
Yeah, and here you go.
Yeah.
Here are the keys.
Have fun. Get ready. Yeah.
So it's. It'd be nice to see them, be able to bounce back.
Right.
I saw you threw a bone to Ross Tucker, gave him an interview every after he trapped your Three Musketeers. Huh?
Yeah. When he got that promotion by CBS, I thought, we'll give him a little bite of the apple. Yeah,
sure, why not?
Because he's not on social media enough or Eagles preseason games or. But you'll see a lot of LL players though on our site, and I think the interview with Dendel is on there.
Yeah, I scrolled through so people could see the stuff that's on there, and Dendel was there.
And there'll be a lot more this week.
Yeah, as things really get going here. So we'll round it out by talking about the season finale. LL really set things up nicely, and in Section 2 you have Manheim Central at Exeter this year, and up in Section 1 you have Manheim Township at Wilson. Which last year was a great game down in Neffsville. Thankfully, Wilson hosting on senior night against the Blue Streaks, who have a lot coming back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, skill wise, they're going to be tough to beat. Like I envision Township putting up a lot of points this season. Hayden Johnson. Speaking of those interviews, I got one with him that'll be posted this week. But he's their all-state quarterback. He threw for over 2,600 yards last season as a junior. He led the whole league. He threw 26 touchdown passes. He's closing in. He needs about 350 to get to 5,000 career passing yards. But then you have Clancy back at running back. You have Kennel back at wide receiver, who's committed to Monmouth. Wolf is back at wide receiver. Nick Good, he mentions in the interview Troy Vasquez, who he said is a player. I always try to find out who's someone who could have a breakout year, and he mentioned him. So I think as far as if you're into fantasy football, they are loaded. The question for me with Township is going to be how good are they up front. So we'll see. But if he has time to throw, if they get good line play, they got to the district final last season.
They did, yeah.
I would not be shocked if they get back there.
Yeah, Mark Evans' squad was 9-4 last year. They were District 3 6A runner-up, and their 4 losses were to Cumberland Valley, who they then beat again in the playoffs, Hempfield, who they then beat again in the playoffs, Wilson, and then Harrisburg, who beat them after they upset them
right.
at Harrisburg. Now I think Sean Lee didn't play in that game, and Harrisburg beat them pretty good in the district championship game. But those 4 losses all against premier District 3 6A teams, and Township was really good, really strong last year. District 3 6A runner-up. A bunch of those guys back. You just heard Paul say. So yeah, it'll come down to the trenches. Mark Evans might know a thing or two about getting stuff out of those guys. So we'll see. That game will be at Gursky Stadium on October 27th, and that is the regular season finale. Wilson got the win last year, 27-21, and the Blue Streaks' last win against Wilson was in 2019.
That was a heck of a game last year.
Last year, it was a very exciting game, back and forth game. Cam Jones had another great night. that night. Had a bunch of threw for a touchdown that night, ran for a few, and they were able to get the job done. Got to stop when they needed it defensively. So, all right. Well, that is the 10-game schedule for Wilson football this year. We appreciate everyone joining us. Paul, do you have any final thoughts, anything we missed, or anything you want to say about the Bulldogs in 2023?
Well, I just think, your listeners and viewers and the whole community is really blessed to have you guys doing what you do, because, the amount of content that you guys provide is unbelievable for one high school. And I hope people don't take it for granted. A lot of times they do, and people may now be seeing with other media outlets how things can change, and you don't get the same type of coverage that you once did. So never take for granted, all the interviews that you guys are posting, all the highlights, a weekly show like this where you're going to be in depth about the players and the matchups and the teams and the stats and the history and things like that. So Wilson community is really fortunate that they have a show like this and the access that you guys can provide. And then we pointed out the website. I would just ask people if you can follow SV Sports on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. You'll see a lot of content there, a lot of cool highlights and stuff. If you're interested in finding out what the heck Rod Wave Elite is, you can see some stuff there.
New to Justin and I,
it worked. I just ripped the Band-Aid off and was like, Paul, I'm old.
Yeah.
I need you to explain this to me.
Yeah, I was the same way. Yeah.
Well, yesterday at the scrimmage, he's like, "Have you ever heard of Rod Wave Elite?" I was like, "I have no idea what you're talking
Right.
about."
I don't know any of the words.
Well, I don't know anything you just said. All of those words are confusing.
Yeah.
And then we talked about it, and then he posted stuff on Instagram, and I was like, "Oh, he was not joking about."
Right,
Because
I know.
said, I was like, "Is it
Well,
essentially like AAU Globetrotters?" Is what it sounded
Right.
A little
like.
bit, yeah.
Yeah, I saw your post, and that's what got me. I was like, I need to ask her about this tomorrow.
Yeah.
Well, Paul, thank you for the kind words, and thank you for joining us. And the community has really embraced it took some time to get people back on it because they were used to the show being on TV and being an hour a week with Coach Contafio and Coach Brubaker. But this is actually this is season 9 of this, our rebooted version of the show. And people really over the last, I'd say it really started to take off in like 2019. I feel like is the year that things really started moving, and we got much more viewership and interaction. It's been a lot of fun, and especially when the younger kids are excited about it, and then the parents really get involved and they want to talk about it. But it's been fun, and Justin and I would do it whether or not. We had a ton of people
it's
talking
fun,
to us
and
about it,
like you said, but part of it is like the access we're given by the coaches and the players and everything also is just huge. Like if they weren't open to us doing it, that would be real limited what we could do. But it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and it's important because unfortunately the communication side isn't really something that's taught at the high school level. And nowadays, so many kids, and adults are guilty of it too, but it's just pick up your phone or that gaming system or the Oculus or whatever and they're so tuned out, they can't hold conversations. And whether it's getting an internship or speaking with a college recruiter, whether it's for athletics or not, going for a job eventually, sure, you'll email your resume, but there will be a point where you're going to have to speak to someone. Right. And if your head's down, your posture's bad, you're not looking someone in the eye, you're mumbling, it's us, likes, ums. So how do you improve on that? Well, communicating's a skill, just like catching a football, throwing a football, hitting a baseball, anything else. You got to work on it. You have to do it. So the interviews that you guys conduct with all these kids, the interviews that I do for the websites, it helps them improve in those kind of areas that I think when you just look at math, history, science, those things are valuable tools and they're all necessary. But there's other learning that needs to take place, and this is an avenue that can help students when they get outside the walls of Wilson.
Yeah, it's low stakes, but it's high impact. You know, they're talking to people, and people watching it already like them. You know, they're already excited. They want to hear what they have to say. You gotta know how to speak, and it's something that I know Justin and I work on all the time, trying to, how can we make the show better? How can we communicate our thoughts better? And
and video's king nowadays. I mean, you put those interviews up, the highlights up. It's one thing with my transition from the radio world to what I've been doing for the last few years. People love the videos. I mean, they really do.
Well, and all the high school kids, like, seeing like the Dendel interview, all that stuff, like, and it's cool because, like you said, we've being around those kids, but seeing them grow in that regard too. Seeing them grow from these sometimes the squirrely middle school kids, that we get to know, into these massive, in Dendel's case, like dudes, and just watching them be more comfortable talking to the interviewer and all of that it's really fun.
Yeah, it has been a lot of fun, and bringing it back to full circle and finishing with Wilson. The Wilson senior class is really fun. They were there's a lot of entertainment value in our discussion with the senior players, and that's a great show. That's always our most popular show each year, is the senior player interviews, and I thought this group did a great job. And then watching the ones you've posted, mentioned the Dendel one that's up there. Did you also talk to Logan?
Yep. Yeah, I thought I saw that posted the other day too.
So. And I know you'll have a few more in the pipeline or coming up in the future featuring Wilson players. And you can check that all out at SV Sports across their social media, and also BurkeSportsReport.com. And once again, we thank you, Paul, for joining us here on the Bulldog Hour. You're no stranger to productions put on by Justin and I. We always have you on. We'll have to get you back on for NFL talk once the high school football season ends.
Hopefully into December.
Yeah,
before we get
Bulldog
to that show.
Hour needs to go through November. That's always our goal. We want to get to 20 episodes and be talking after Thanksgiving. That's what we want. So.
Yep. The more the merrier.
Exactly.
And am I right? 7 wins shy of 600?
So Wilson is sitting at 593 wins as a program. 7 wins this year will get them to 600, almost exactly a decade after they got to 500. So you do the math there. That's a pretty successful decade. You're looking at 10-ish wins a season. And that also has a COVID year in there where the team only played, seven games. So, a lot on the table for Wilson this year. They can't possibly get to it until the Hempfield game, but that would require them to win every single one ahead of that. And we know there's a couple teams in front of them that are going to have they're going to have solid defenses for that Wilson victory. They don't want to add to that number. They don't want to allow us to keep pace with or catch up to Manheim Central, who's at 594. So. All right, I think that's it for us here at the Bulldog Hour. You can catch Justin and I next Saturday, August 26th, 8:30 here to recap the Roman Catholic game and preview Game 2 against Central Dauphin. And like we said before, you can catch Paul Roberts across SV Sports social media accounts and BurkeSportsReport.com. So that's it for us here. Thanks for listening to this episode, and we'll be back again in 6 days. But until then, remember, go Bulldogs.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Bulldog Hour. Want more Wilson football? Follow the show on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud. Or visit www.bulldoghour.com. The Bulldog Hour is a featured program on jmnjrradio.com.